and he has given a lot of talks in all our conferences. And I now request Dr. Raj Kumar to give his talk on innovations in PICU.
Good afternoon, all of you. Am I audible? Is this screen seen?
Yes, you are audible. Your screen is visible, sir.
Thank you, sir. First, I want to thank the IAP Chennai City branch and the organizing team for the opportunity. And in fact, it helped me to brush up some of the history of innovations in PICU. So whenever we talk about innovation, what comes to especially in PICU, what comes to our mind immediately is the machines and the technology that is used in PICU. Here you can see the ventilator here, the ultrasound machine, the multi-parameter monitor, the infusion pumps, the ECMO machine, and so many things. But innovation is not equal to technology. It is not equal to a grand invention. What it simply means is it is a novel, usually creative solution. Sometimes it could be very simple, but the important thing is it should provide solution to meaningful problems around you. So it should be novel, it should be creative. It can be complex, it could be simple, but the most important thing is it should solve our meaningful problems that we face day to day. Now, in terms of value, it can cause improvement in effectiveness. Effectiveness is we are able to achieve what we want to achieve. Efficiency, improve efficiency. Efficiency is achieve the same thing with less resources, less manpower, less cost, less faster time. The next is access, whether there is an improvement in the access, like it is available for everyone in remote areas, irrespective of their paying capacity. Improves quality and improves safety. So these are the things that you try to achieve by innovating. And it could be in diagnosis of a condition, monitoring of a patient in ICU. It could be a therapy that we are giving. It could be to prognosticate the outcomes of a critically ill child. Or it could be just the process by which we give the ICU care to the child. Or it could be training doctors, nurses, paramedics. So it could be these things. But it should be practically applicable and it should be scalable in multiple settings. It is not enough if it is possible only in one tertiary center. So these are the attributes of an innovation. So let's take an example. Before going to the example, we just see the phases of innovations. The word innovation is used a lot in business, is used a lot in technology. So some of the concepts I have taken from business and technology, and we'll see how it is applied in healthcare and especially ICU. So there are three phases of innovation. So the first is conception. You identify a problem and you think of a possible solution. And then you implement in terms of an equipment, like you create a prototype, try it in a small area. Usually when you introduce a new technology, it usually causes some problems which is not there before. It creates some new problems. There will be barriers in implementing it. So you have to identify and overcome the barriers and then try to solve the problems that it brings. Of course, in business, they call marketing because they scale up and then available for multiple places in large volumes at a lower cost. But in terms of ICU, maybe instead of marketing, we can say the dissemination of the new concept or the new technology so that it is adopted by multiple centers. So now let us just take an example. I think when COVID became a big problem initially in the West and then again in India, there was a shortage of ventilators. So there were patients who were dying because ventilators were not available. And then they came out with a fancy idea. You can use one ventilator, use two circuits, split it, and then use for two patients. So again, it's a problem and immediately there was an innovative solution idea, but it never materialized because there are a lot of problems. The different patients will have different conditions of their lung, the monitoring, triggering, there are multiple issues. So there is always a slip between the cup and the lip. A good idea may not always be translated into practice. But having said that, what is shunned today by the world can become the standard of care tomorrow. So that is also important. So when Galileo, Copernicus initially told that the earth is revolving around the sun, and they were actually put to trial. So maybe now there is a company which is working in USA from Massachusetts. We're trying to use one ventilator to solve all the troubleshooting that is currently there so that it can be used successfully in multiple patients. So we need to have an open mind for that. But for today's talk, rather than concentrating on things which has a potential to change the way we treat patients in the future, let's concentrate on innovations which are already there which is available in some centers but may not be available in every center, and how we can use this innovative concept to our day-to-day practice. Now, again, this slide is from business terminology. So when you say the types of innovation, it is classified as 4 types. So now on the x-axis, you have the technology. It could be an existing technology, or it could be a new technology. And the y-axis refers to the domain or an area where it is used. So you may we can improvise the existing technology, which is solving an existing problem in a given area. So that is called as incremental innovation. I'll explain each one with an example from outside medical world, and then we will see an example in the medical world. Next, you have an architectural innovation where the technology is already there, but it is used in some other field, and you're trying to use it in a different new area. So that is architectural innovation or a breakthrough innovation. The third one is disruptive innovation. You have an existing area with an existing problem, and you come out with a new technology which helps to solve the problem. It is called as disruptive because sometimes it is so much better than the previous one. People stop using the previous, it disrupts the existing technology. Radical innovation is right now, we don't even know whether there is any scope for that particular technology, whether there is a particular problem in the field. But once it is introduced, then it may be a game changer. It is from a basic research. Now let us understand each one of it from a non-medical point of view. Incremental innovation is like they are refining which is already there. So for example, we have car models which keep on improvising every year. MS Word, every few years it improves. They try to solve the existing problems and make it better, improve quality. The other one is, the next level is architectural innovation, where they are using the same technology to a new area. They're increasing the broader use. And for example, internet was there and people were searching for information in libraries and other things, but they try to put everything and they try to use an existing internet technology for search engine. And now we know that Google is bread and butter of everyone now. Disruptive technology, like better technology, which replaces the existing one. So we know about Ola, Netflix, Airbnb. So they just came in and then they took out the old method of operating in all these sectors. And whenever this disruptive technology is used to reduce cost, it is called as frugal innovation. So we all know about the Tata Nano, how they were able to bring down the cost. The radical innovation is completely brand new. It's out of the box. So we can think of a Tesla car, which may be coming in future, where you don't have a driver. And when iPod was first introduced, it was a completely new idea. So we have incremental innovation, architectural innovation, disruptive innovation, and radical innovation. Sorry for boring you with other concepts, but I think this is important for us to understand what's happening in the medical world. So now let us apply the same thing in a medical field, especially ICU. When you talk about the incremental innovations, we are only refining what is already there. So a typical example is a ventilator. See, right now we have the 4th generation ventilators. And when you see how it started, the first ventilator was a negative pressure ventilator. So it was first used in a polio epidemic. And it was used to be like a huge machine, like an MRI, where the person will go inside and it will give a negative pressure rather than giving a positive pressure, and literally expand the lung. Then came the first generation ventilators, which were only volume controlled. So it was not synchronized with the patient's effort. So a lot of asynchrony, pneumothorax was a problem. You couldn't get any output from the patient, whether what is happening to the patient, alarms and monitoring was not possible. Then came the 2nd generation ventilators, which had sensors so that the machine could give the ventilation when the patient is trying to breathe. So it was synchronized. You could get monitoring data, how much tidal volume patient is getting, what is the pressure that is generated in the ventilator circuit. And based on that, you can set alarms, and you can also use pressure ventilation. So pressure ventilation with small babies, volume ventilation was very difficult. Then came the 3rd generation, where there was a microprocessor inside the ventilator. So you could use a closed loop. You can control one of the other. It's like automatic car. We can, the automatic car adjust the gear.
Dr. Rajkumar, you are not audible.
There is some connectivity issue, I think.
Electricity is going off in many regions, sir.
I think that is the reason.
Sir?
Dr.
Dr.
Rajkumar,
sir,
I think he's
must have lost connectivity. sir,
Connectivity
because
is
of this,
gone. No, I think he's trying to connect again.
We'll wait for a few minutes, otherwise we'll go.
Yeah, he's connected, but
Yes. Now he's connected. I think coming. Now he's getting connected.
yes.
Dr. Rajkumar.
Sorry, again there is there is a problem with the power and the Wi-Fi got this thing connected through my hotspot. Sorry.
Yeah, now it's visible.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Yeah, so we were actually discussing about the ventilator. So right now we have the future ventilator. So this is an example of a incremental innovation where existing technology to solve an existing problem, it's fine-tuned and then made better and better. Now coming to architectural innovation, see already there is a technology and now it is being used in a new area. A typical example is what Dr. Karthik mentioned about bedside ultrasound. Ultrasound has been used in the radiology for a long time, but now it is being used in the ICU at the bedside in a new area. Similarly, cardiopulmonary bypass machine has been used for cardiac congenital heart surgery for a long time, but now it is used in ICU for ECMO support. So I think some of the things already Karthik has explained. So we use an ultrasound to insert a central line, so IJV line, femoral line. So you makes it easier to insert without any with less chances of complication at a faster time. And in fact, the Institute of Health has highlighted this as one of the top 10 innovations which improves patient safety in the ICU. And again, about the assessment of shock, seeing the IVC filling, seeing the contractility and decide whether you want to give fluids or inotrope, already Dr. Karthik has covered. Then about the lung ultrasound. The lung ultrasound is also very interesting. Initially, the ultrasound was not considered as a modality for lung because air does not conduct the ultrasound waves. But there was an adult intensivist, Lichtenstein from France, who saw the artifacts which are created by the reflected waves from the air interface, and then discovered about the A lines and B lines. And now it is useful for ruling out conditions like pneumothorax and to pick up pulmonary edema. It's very useful. And again, the role of FAST in a trauma patient, to see whether there is any abdominal bleeding, whether there is pneumothorax. And again, the limitation in children also was highlighted in the previous talk. Then even as an extension, it is used in other areas. We can even use an optic nerve sheath diameter to see whether there is increased intracranial pressure, whether this child needs an urgent CT scan, whether it needs an intervention, or it can be even serially monitored on the first 2 days in the ICU. And a lot of procedures in the ICU, pleural tap, even a difficult lumbar puncture in an obese patient can all be done using an ultrasound. And it is so much used in the adult practice. They've even started doing assessment of the patient during CPR. Every 2 minutes, in addition to checking the rhythm and the pulse, they also put a probe to see the treatable causes, reversible causes of cardiac arrest. So even that has been incorporated. Of course, there are a lot of limitations that Dr. Karthik mentioned. So one of the most striking limitation is the availability of the machine, the cost involved. Second is the expertise, gaining the expertise by the treating team. And let me just share an experience how we tackle this problem. So cost is an issue even in corporate hospitals where an adult-based pediatrics is a part of an adult setup. The cost will always go to the spending will always be to the adults because it is revenue making. So we got an ultrasound machine which was about to be condemned from the radiology and started doing ultrasound. And even that machine was giving so much information that it really helped in the management of the patient. The other thing is you can share the machine from obstetrics. Usually pediatrics will have a good relationship with obstetrics. You can get an ultrasound machine from the OG department, and that will be very useful. The second is a learning curve. So even, of course, initial stages, you should use ultrasound only to learn and not to take clinical decisions based on that if you are not comfortable. But there are a lot of courses which are available. Your IAP intensive care chapter conducts it. WinFocus is another thing which conducts ultrasound courses regularly. There is another good course, bedside ultrasound from the adult ICU team in CMC Vellore. If someone wants to adapt ultrasound in their ICU, they can attend these courses. They are extremely useful. And it is one thing which can have a tremendous amount of impact in the patient outcomes in ICU, in both the corporate setup as well as in the government setup. About the ECMO, again, cardiopulmonary bypass was used to do the function of the heart and lung when the surgeon operates the heart. But the same thing was adopted in ICU. In fact, it was first done in neonates in a meconium aspiration syndrome. And it was in 1975 and 76. But when it was first introduced, it was considered so disruptive and unsafe. When they tried to publish that, it was rejected by more than 5 journals. And it was published recently after all so much of success in ECMO. So when a technology comes initially, we should not have skepticism, even though it causes, there are some barriers and some problems which it might bring. And it's just not that it made a difference in managing patients. It was extended to other indications. So after the former CM was put on ECMO after her cardiac arrest, eCPR was become so popular that even once one of the child with parent with an acute liver failure asked me, why you don't put my child on ECMO? So the awareness increased so much. So within 10 minutes of cardiac arrest, if the cardiac arrest is because of an etiology, which will correct immediately with a specific treatment, then you can initiate ECMO. Even within 20 minutes, there are centers which initiate ECMO within 20 minutes of cardiac arrest if the CPR is not successful. The other problem was ECMO needed for a sick patient who may be in a remote area and the ECMO facility may be in a distant area. It is very difficult to shift a sick patient all across to that tertiary center. So the photo here is Dr. Pranay, who was able to popularize ECMO in India. He used to travel with his own ECMO machine to different corners of the country where ECMO was needed. And that is how ECMO was introduced and made a difference in the critical care. But now we have sophisticated transport ECMOs where you can go to the place, initiate ECMO and transport the patient back to the tertiary center. So such small machines which can be carried in the ambulance is available now. And now to improve the patient quality, now we have awake ECMO where you can even extubate the patient and then allow the patient to breathe when the machine is going to take care of all the oxygenation and everything. Even that is possible. Even in children, there are some centers which are trying that. So we can see how technology which is used in a different area is introduced and then constantly refined to cover more and more problems. The next one is disruptive innovation. So where a new technology solves an existing problem. And the classic example is a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Of course, it is out of ICU. In adult elective surgeries, laparoscopic cholecystectomy is completely replaced the open surgery, at least in the tertiary centers. A typical PICU example would be an arterial switch operation. And cost cutting would be a model of Arvind High Hospital and Narayana Healthcare. We'll see that in a minute. So just to explain the example of arterial switch, we all know the transposition of great arteries. The aorta is coming from the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery is coming from the left ventricle. So there is no way that patient will be able to survive without connections. So the traditional surgery was atrial switch. So the arteries were not touched, but the blood from the right atrium was allowed to go to the left ventricle, and from there it will go to the pulmonary artery. Similarly, blood from the lungs would go to the left atrium, would go to the right ventricle, from there will go to the heart. The initial outcomes, the immediate post-op outcome was great, but the children had problems with the high output, high heart failure when they became adult. So the arterial switch was tried. So there the arteries were switched, but the immediate post-op mortality was very high because of the coronary anastomosis were very challenging. But a simple modification of the technique, the way they anastomose, they just made a small change, and now arterial switch become a standard of care, and now the atrial switch is hardly done. Only in exceptional situations it is being done. When it comes to cost cutting or frugal innovation, the Indian Jugaad is well known. So we all know about the mission or Mars mission. Mangalyaan. It was done with 1/7 the cost of what USA was used. So when the oil is fully boiled, very very hot, you can even stop the gas to save the gas, and with that heat we can we can make puris. So once the spacecraft leaves the atmosphere, the gravity, you can just switch off the engine. It will continue to travel, and then you will again need it only when you reach the orbit of the Mars. So that's what the movie says. I don't know exactly whether it's true or not, but they were able to cut down the cost significantly. And the Arvind Eye Care is very well known for bringing down the cost significantly. And coming to ICU, the cost of an open heart surgery in the ICU care is significantly less. And for every child who needs an ECMO following a cardiac surgery, the ECMO is offered free, completely free. And that is possible because they do a huge volume. It's a specialized ICU where they do only cardiac problems. And when the volumes are more, they are able to do more surgeries per day because the experience and the logistics are so much sorted. They're able to do more volumes, and it improves the quality, and they're able to bargain the cost from the suppliers. And that is how they're able to reduce the cost. And coming to, of course, a routine ICU, can it be used? Yes, we all know that HFNC is very useful in ICU, but the HFNC circuit and the prongs comes with a lot of cost. And so one of the solutions would be to use the existing ventilator circuit to use to give a HFNC, and that will bring down the cost. And we just need to change the adapter, and we used to use it. But now this is accepted by the ventilator companies, and now they are coming out, both ventilator companies and the HFNC machine providers are coming out with solutions where you can use the same circuit for both invasive ventilation as well as HFNC. It's very useful when you switch over from one mode to the other mode. So that is disruptive innovation and frugal innovation. Coming to radical innovation, so it usually stems from basic research. It's a completely brand new concept. In the medical example would be stem cells and genomics. So this is an example of a patient we had. This is a child who suddenly had cardiac arrest in the wards. So completely well child, seemed to be stable 1 hour before. Suddenly had a cardiac arrest and had a ventricular fibrillation and things. But when we took the sample and then sent it, even though we could not save the child, we were able to take the sample and send it. And the genetic testing, the whole gene sequence showed that it was CPT2 deficiency. And we are able to at least offer the genetic counseling for the next pregnancy, and the family benefited by that. So this is an invention which stemmed from basic research, not a direct ICU intervention, but that has made such a big difference in the family. So sometimes it's unfortunate that we see two children with the same problems in the same thing. First child dies in the ICU, the second child comes back with the same problem. It's really heartbreaking for the family. So that can be avoided. So the various other, going on to the other areas of innovations, it could be diagnosis, monitoring, therapy, prognosis, could be the process of care, or it could be training and research. It adds value in effectiveness, efficiency, access to everyone, quality, safety, and family-centered care. Let's just see some examples. When it comes to diagnostics, we've already covered the point of care testing with a very short turnaround time about glucometer, urine dipstick, blood gas. Has all been covered by Dr. Karthik. We can include the infective workup, dengue antigen, rapid test for malaria. So it just made a world of difference there. You're able to initiate the life-saving therapy without delay. And going on to other imaging innovations, many ICUs, we have a PAC system. So where an X-ray or a CT, the film and the report is available to be seen in a PAC station in the ICU. Sometimes it can be even seen by a physician from home and even in their mobile phone. And it is so much that some of the radiologists are even reporting scans from US and the UK sitting in India. The other concept is portable CT. A sick child, we are always very dread to shift a patient to an CT room because the child will be on multiple infusions, very unstable. Now, can we bring the machine like an X-ray? Portable CT is now possible. I think some of the hospitals in Delhi are already using that. And that is another innovation. We have newer scans like PET scans. So we had a child with super refractory status epilepticus, multiple anticonvulsants, ventilated, no response. But the MRI, what MRI could not pick up, the PET was able to pick up a lesion which could be corrected by surgery. So it made a big difference. So imaging innovations, they're all helping in the diagnosis of patient. And what about monitoring? So now going on to monitoring, we have the patients with meningitis or head injury when the intracranial pressure is very high. All along we've been doing invasive intracranial pressure monitoring. But now we have very non-invasive monitoring which can be done continuously. So like NIRS. NIRS is an infrared spectroscopy. It is like a pulse oximeter. You're measuring the oxygen levels in the tissues of the brain. It can be done for the kidneys. So it gives you an idea about the oxygen status, oxygen delivery status to the tissues, and it can be done real time. So that is again available. Even though it's expensive, it has come in some of the ICUs. And we have continuous cardiac output monitoring. So you can do an echo to see the heart function, but that can be done intermittently. If you have an arterial line and a central line, and if you have the technology, you can measure the cardiac output, you can measure the systemic vascular resistance. So that way you can decide whether you want to give a inotrop or you want to give a vasopressor. It can be real, just like heart rate and BP, this can be monitored continuously. Coming to remote monitoring. So initially for multiple patients, suppose there are 4 patients in the ICU. So all the 4 screen can be seen in one screen with a nurse sitting in the nursing desk. That was possible. Now, if you have an internet connection, the same thing is possible to be seen by a physician consultant at home. Of course, you need doctors around the clock in the ICU, but sometimes it is not possible for the senior doctor to be there 24/7. So they can always see that. In addition to the monitors, it is also possible to see the X-ray, the images, the lab investigations, even the video of the patient can be integrated. So Philips has come out with, again, a disclaimer. So a lot of examples I'm giving, the company names are just for an example and not to promote any particular product. So Philips IntelliVue monitor is has revolutionized tele-PICU, and you won't believe that the ICU team is doing tele-ICU to a hospital, adult hospital in USA from Chennai. So that is happening. Of course, there are a lot of barriers in using it in large scale, especially in PICU, because children are different from adults. And the barriers are the technology, the cost, and you should know what is the capability of the team which is doing it, and they should follow that. Again, there are issues with insurance reimbursement and other things. So because of that, it is not taken in a big way. But definitely there is a lot of role. You can, especially in a resource-limited, low-volume centers, managing a sick patient may not be possible. You should transport the patient to a higher center, or manage the patient in the level 1 center with guidance from an expert who's elsewhere. So that will help in capacity building. It will improve quality. It can also bring in financial cost in a corporate setup. And it is not just 24/7 teleconsultation. The telecenter should guide on the infrastructure, should make protocols for the primary center, should train the doctors initially, and then should do ongoing teaching program. Only then the tele-PICU will work. Just sitting outside and then viewing monitors and giving information will not work. It should be a part of an overall capacity building exercise. The bedside team again should be available on site to carry out the orders, should be able to initiate the tele-PACU consultation and do routine reporting and tele-PACU ward rounds. And of course, even if it looks
Only 2
far-fetched,
minutes
but
left, Dr. Rajkumar.
okay, sir, I'll wind up. Everyone is doing tele-PACU in their own way. Like we all have WhatsApp groups. Even just a few hours back, we had an X-ray from our ICU asking whether it is a heart block or just a bradycardia. So that keeps on happening at an informal level. And COVID has actually made a lot of people innovate. We have all come out with COVID home package, and the home pulse oximeter has become very widely used. And again, we started using, some centers, adult centers started using video laryngoscopy. With all the PPE, it's so difficult to intubate. And to prevent infection, we have used various barrier devices like this head box while intubating. And again, the vaccine. So the vaccine development from 15 years, now we have got a vaccine within 1 year. And that is possible because of the need of the hour. Artificial intelligence as a high, to get all the information from all the monitors, and then whether the artificial intelligence will predict what is going to happen, whether it can help the doctors in taking decisions. So IBM has come out with a Watson Health, which is working a lot on artificial intelligence in adult critical care. Soon it might come in few years' time in pediatrics. So we will start wondering whether is it a doctor or a technologist in the ICU. Home ICU, like children who are technology dependent when they are sent home, it's very difficult for them to continue in the ICU, cost, hospital-acquired infections, and the parents lose their livelihood. But you can do a tracheostomy, gastrostomy, home ventilation. Even that is possible in some of the patients for an ICU technology-dependent child. We have electronic medical records and the recording of parent counseling. Very crucial communication for some of the hospitals are starting to record to avoid medico-legal problems. But it need not be high-end stuff. Even simple things like having a checklist before intubating or having a bundle approach. Bundle is doing few things together, overall improving the outcome. For example, the septic shock bundle. What are the things that have to be done within 3 hours and 6 hours has shown to improve outcomes significantly. So simple things like a checklist and bundle care are innovations which can improve outcomes. Next, coming on to training, we have all this simulation. Because adult learners, we experience and then we reflect on that and make changes. So PediStars in India have come a long way in promoting simulation in India. And family-centered care, that is again a new concept where the families are allowed to stay with the patient in the ICU so that the stress is reduced. They also take part in giving care to the patient. That has also shown to improve the quality. So again, training. Lecture like this from a boring person like me, may make you sleep like this. But the same thing, if you do like a simulation, everyone is happy and smiling. So you can learn a procedure by seeing a video, practice on mannequins, and then you can do on the patient. So it improves the patient safety. So learning need not always be hard work. It can always be smart work. So we have Open Pediatrics, which has revolutionized learning, especially in PICU. And of course, we have the IAP and the IAP intensive care chapter, which has come out with modules for all the fellows in PICU and now out with the nurses also to learn. So that has made a lot of difference. And this is my last slide. So when we say innovation, it is not always a new invention or a great revolution. It is simple, novel, creative, practical solutions which will solve meaningful problems around us. So it should add value to whatever we are doing. So first we should ask to find answers, and then you should start questioning the answer itself and try to find a better solution. So that way, each one of us can actually be an innovator so that the outcomes of children in ICU would improve. So with that, I'll stop.
Thank you, Dr. Rajkumar, for the excellent talk on innovations. As the time is very short, now questions can be taken up in the chat box. Over to Dr. Dakshayani.
Thank you, sir. Thanks everyone for that session, and may now request Dr. Janani Shankar Madam, past President IAP Chennai City Branch and Scientific Chair of Madras Pedicon, Marina Pedicon 2021 to chair the next session and conduct the proceedings.
Thank you.